Hi, everybody. I'm Margot True. I'm the food editor at Sunset Magazine here in Oakland, California. And I'm in the kitchen with Daniel Patterson, who is a very well-known San Francisco chef, for those of you who may not have heard of him. He's the founder of Qua and Alta, and his restaurant group also has taken over Alfred Steakhouse, which is the oldest steakhouse in California. And he also started with Roy Choi in LA, the breakthrough restaurant concept local. So welcome to...
Thank you, really excited to be here.
Thank you, to Sunset. And you know, we have just done a story about you guys, about Alfred's, particularly in the Sunset September issue. Here's what the cover looks like, and here's the story. And it is such a glamorous place, Alfred's. It really is where you go for a night of magic, in my opinion, and every one of us who's worked on this story. Fabulous steaks, amazing food. Daniel has been very generous and has given us lots and lots of recipes. So pick up the issue when you can and treat yourself to everything from, the Martinez Martini, which was the precursor or an early-ish version of a classic martini, to possibly the most thrilling and definitely the most flammable recipe that we have in this issue, which is bananas Foster. And that's what you were going to show us how to do.
Absolutely, right? Really excited to make this and to not set the studio on fire.
We would be grateful.
No guarantees.
Uh-oh, okay. Well, just to start off with, how does your version at Alfred's differ from the classic one?
Well, the classic, as popularized in New Orleans, has pecans, I think.
Yeah. Instead
of the brioche.
Right.
And so that's one difference. Probably the choice of the rum's a little different. I don't know if they use lime juice and lime zest, but we're in California, so.
Yeah, citrus. We have to have citrus. Yeah. So in these brioche croutons that you've made are, so basically the crunch in the dish is coming from these crispy, crunchy croutons instead of toasted pecans. And how do you just cut up brioche, I guess. We brought this brioche for you. This is about the sort of thing you would use at the restaurant?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really, really simple. Just croutons made with sugar instead of salt.
Oh, okay.
And lots of sugar.
Yeah.
So then they're sweet, whereas normally croutons are going to be a little bit savory for a salad.
Yeah.
They perform the same function. And the brioche has some nice richness to it, but also airiness. So like a sourdough bread wouldn't work as well. It'd be a little dense. Pain de mie would work great, or brioche, but something that has a nice light structure that gets really crisp and that is not too insubstantial, so it can kind of hold some of the sauce without sogging. Yeah,
one of the things I liked about this recipe was how dark you get the croutons. Like it's just a nice toast, so that they don't, just completely sog up in the sauce. So they're really nice. And in fact, I've just been snacking on them plain. I think they're delicious. So, why don't we talk a little bit about the rums you chose, since this was pretty exciting for us. We'd never heard of some of these things before. So this rum, I think, is one of your particular favorites that you had pointed out to us.
Yeah, and each one has its own place in the recipe, and each one has its own function. So this one, which is an aged rum, is very smooth, and it has buttery characteristics, very aromatic, and but at the same time, kind of a mellow, gentle, just really beautiful flavor that integrates into the cream and the butter. So that kind of creates a really foundational flavor. The overproof rum, of course, is for the fire.
Yes.
And also, it's the spice. It's a little sharper. It punctuates the sauce and gives it a little edge, kind of the way black pepper would in a dish. And then this one is obviously the kind of almond flavor.
Amaretto.
Yes. Yeah. And that as a liqueur, I mean, you could replace it with Grand Marnier if you wanted orange or some other liqueur. But in this case, the nuttiness of the butter and the the other kinds of rum, and then the almond flavor kind of fused together, and so it gives a round and a kind of a richness and a dimension to the sauce.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we really were knocked out by, was how many layers of flavor there was in a dessert that otherwise, honestly, is pretty sickeningly sweet, honestly. And this is not. It's sweet, but it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's I mean, for one thing, caramel, obviously, the process by which sugar becomes caramel or caramelized sugar is kind of the same process, the same elements develop when you grill a piece of meat. So if you think about the simplicity of raw beef and the complexity of a grilled steak and all of those secondary aromatics, that same thing is going on when you take sugar and you caramelize it. So it's developing like amazing amounts of flavor beyond what it started with. And then all of the rums and everything feed into that. And so that's where the cooking process helps.
Yeah, and the sugar too, right? I mean, sorry, the butter also. The fact that the butter is browning is also adding more flavors. And, and speaking of layering flavors, I also have to talk about this book of yours, this beautiful book that you've written with Mandy Aftel, The Art of Flavor, and it's just such an interesting book. You introduce the reader to all kinds of concepts from the perfume world that can be used to think about food. And I wondered if you could talk about a few of them. For instance, locking and burying. Those are two different terms, but I'm fascinated by this. So, thanks so much for bringing it out. It's a book that started out. So I wrote a book about aroma with Mandy, 2003, and came out in 2004, and it was about aroma and essential oils. And I was at her studio a couple years ago, and we're talking about our creative process, which is very similar to the way that she makes perfume and thinks about flavor, and the way that I think about flavor as a cook. And we thought, well, let's make a book about flavor. We did one of aroma and one of flavor. How hard could it be? The answer is really hard. So we spent 2 years on that, trying to simplify or to give a simple understanding to something that's really complex. And one of the things that really came up was things like locking and burying, which were how Mandy teaches her classes and the language that she has given to certain kinds of interaction. So in food, we don't have a lot of language for certain things. The language of cuisine is pretty universal, but it doesn't always translate into spoken language. And so one of the great things about the book is it gives language to phenomenon that most cooks kind of get to know intuitively, like when you add two things together, they bind into a third flavor, and that's locking. And it's a very simple thing, but it's understanding why and how that happens is really fascinating, because you start to realize that fat, like the butter, like the cream, have a role in that. How something cooks, like a stew. If you think about using all these disparate ingredients, and then by the end of that stew, they've all woven together into one flavor. And so that's locking. And then burying is when you have a really, really strong ingredient, rosemary, lavender, and you want it, but you don't want it too much in there. So you want to bury it. You want to bring it down. And it's also one of the things about the book, so it goes through the 4 points of kind of decisions that you make. If basically anything that you're making, if it's two things that are close together, you want a third element that's kind of distinct. Can you give me an example of that? That two things, like milk and cream, for instance? Or
think about leeks and potatoes.
Okay.
So they're both sweet and earthy, and if you cook them together, they do bind into a very similar, comforting kind of flavor. Maybe not exciting. But you add an herb, tarragon, which kind of pierces through with that licorice note, a little bit of black olive. So a note, something that's a flavor that's far away, that gives it some energy.
Okay.
And then the inverse is true. If two flavors are very, very different, you find something in the middle to unite them, which is usually bland. It could be
a peacemaker.
A peacemaker. Yes, exactly.
I know that's not in your book, that particular term, but
well, we're all thinking about a lot these days. But
we are.
But yes, exactly. And so it kind of works through all of these different things that a cook thinks about, locking and bearing being one of them, and then gets to the end and we have what we call the 7 dials: sweet, sour, salt, bitter, but also fat, also umami, also spice, like chili spice. And the idea is that when you get to the end of a dish, it always needs something.
Right, which you're going to demonstrate in this recipe as well.
Exactly.
And the spice in this case would be, what would you be finishing?
So part of what I would, so the points of punctuation would be the alcohol.
Right.
That little burn. And in this case, lime.
Ah.
So floral green, and it just kind of sits on top, right? So you have all these deep, rich flavors, and it gives it a little spark, a little bit of lemon juice for acidity to balance all of the richness, and a little bit of grated lime and lime zest on top, which gives it kind of aroma at the end. And so what the book really tries to do is say, it doesn't take any time or effort to add a pinch of salt at the end. To take something that's almost all the way there and make it really sing, or in a case of burying, to think about, you burned your pan a little bit,
right,
and you're tasting it in the soup. How do you bring that flavor down? So it's most of what a chef does, to be honest, is fix things.
Right.
And so we tried to make a book that was also not just about how to create, but also how to adjust and, well, to fix things that didn't go quite the way you hoped for. And then part of that learning is you do it better the next time, hopefully.
That's so fascinating. And also you guys, if you have questions, please ask them, because Daniel is really, he's one of the best chefs in the world, not just in the country. And it's your chance to ask him questions, because he always has such a thoughtful way of responding. Really, it's your opportunity. And by the way, if you're just joining us, I'm Margot True. I'm the food editor at Sunset Magazine, and with me is Chef Daniel Patterson here in the Bay Area, who owns several restaurants and whose restaurant group also owns Alfred Steakhouse. And we're talking about Bananas Foster done Alfred Steakhouse way today. So
I'm going to cut some banana.
Yeah, please do.
So Bananas Foster, you need bananas.
You definitely do.
So we'll say, 1.5 is going to be good for us. We'll do for 2 people. And
okay.
Maybe it's a little bit more than we need, but it's always better to have a little more than a little less.
Yeah.
Because I like the ice cream, but the banana is definitely my favorite part. Maybe not that part of the banana.
Yeah.
There we go.
I know. It had a little encounter with a hard surface, I guess.
It happens.
Yeah.
So nothing particularly complicated, but we're cutting it not too thin, because it's going to cook for a minute and it'll break down.
Yeah.
And if you cut it too thin, it'll completely disappear.
I notice you're cutting on the diagonal too. That's just for aesthetic purposes, right?
It's habit, yeah.
Yeah.
So now I've made me self-conscious, and now I'm just doing it regular.
Oh, it's nice on the diagonal. Makes it look a little more special.
We'll have a little mix and match there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Get rid of this for you.
great, thank you. What I'm wondering is, should we get the ice cream out first?
Sure, I think it's probably frozen enough, and that's correct, because this cooking goes really fast, you'll see. So it should be in the bottom shelf.
So it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have vanilla ice cream and lime zest.
Yeah.
And in preparation for finishing this, we're going to put, you can do one, I'll do one.
Sure.
Put some croutons in.
Scatter them about, just as many as you like, right?
As many as you like.
Okay, I love them, so I'm putting like a lot. They're really so light and airy. It's almost like you're eating air, really. Crunchy air.
There we go. All right. So, first off is to figure out
Which
flame. So we're going to put some whole butter and brown sugar. And basically, we're going to cook it over medium-high heat till it starts bubbling, and we're gonna make a caramel sauce.
Yeah, wonderful. And the dark brown sugar seemed to us, when we were making your recipe here at Sunset, to be so much better than light brown or even regular sugar. That also, not only the fact that it's caramelizing, but the fact that it just has a lot more molasses in it, I guess, if it's darker.
Exactly. So cane sugar is basically the juice of the sugar cane,
Right.
which is just all molasses, right? And so white sugar has all the molasses removed, but that's actually where the flavor is.
Yes.
So all of the grades of sugar are really all about how much is left in, from muscovado to light brown to dark brown. And so the dark brown sugar just has the most flavor.
Yeah.
Which is so funny, because we've gotten so used to in this country using white sugar, which is sweet but has no flavor.
Yeah, it's just very one note.
Exactly, because that's one thing we talk about in the book, that we talk about sweet, sour, salt, and bitter as flavors, but they're actually not flavors, they're sensations. So sugar is sweet and honey is sweet, but honey doesn't taste like sugar. And then, olives are salty, but olives don't taste like salt. So, lemon juice and vinegar, both are sour, but they taste very different. And so one of the great things that came out of writing the book was thinking more about the choices we make. For example, the specific rums, all of those little choices kind of add up to a personalized flavor, and someone else might make a different choice, which is kind of the antithesis of the mass-produced kind of approach that we have a lot in this country.
It is, and also, to recipes as well, I should say. And that was one thing that Daniel very gently steered us toward when we were publishing this recipe. He showed us that it wasn't just specifying rum in the ingredient list. You really have to say a rum such as, this Matusalam rum, and to give a few words about its character too. A round buttery rum, such as Matusalam, the words that he used to describe this, because it's important. It will affect the flavor of your finished dish. So
I remember when I was a 20-year-old line cook, and one of the pastry chef told me, can you go check on the caramel to see if it's done? So I did what I knew how to do, which is you stick your finger in it. Don't stick your finger in.
Yeah, don't do that. It seems to, yeah.
I usually, I smell to see when it's at the place where I like it. I like it a little darker. It starts to get almost cardboard kind of aroma as it progresses through the stages of caramel.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm starting to see what you mean.
And especially, so the butter aroma smooths it out. So now I think, oh yeah, it smells good. Add the... Now I have to admit, I like things a little less sweet. So the taking it a little further accentuates the bitterness and kind of tones down the sweetness. So that's my own personal preference. All right, so I think we're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Here we
you go. All right. This is all the rum. You have to push forward, yeah. Let's see.
You do it?
Sure.
Oh yeah, those things.
Whoa! You're so brave to shake the pan. Oh my God.
All right, we give it a minute. We let it die off. then we add a little bit of.
Cinnamon, right?
Yeah, I thought there was a little shaker top.
There is. It's just the holes are very big.
Okay. Well, that was exciting. There's going to be a lot of cinnamon in this.
Now, how would you fix too much cinnamon?
Well, we're gonna start by putting in cream
Okay.
and lime juice, and see what we got.
Okay.
Let's see if we have another spoon.
Sure. Let me see. How about this? Or a wooden spoon or a little spoon? Okay.
I'm going to cook this for a minute or two. Bring that sauce together.
Oh, it smells so good.
Oh, it's perfect.
Oh, good.
So, I have to confess, I put in a little extra of the 151 to make the flames go up higher, so it's usually not this much liquid, but at your house you can do whatever you want. That's the rule. So, bring these back over. And
Would you like your big spoon to serve?
I will.
There you go. I'm going to grab another spoon here. Oh, gosh.
It kind of smells amazing.
It really, really does. Oh, boy. And when this happens at Alfred's, people literally say ooh and ah.
Oh my God, the whole, well, first of all, you can smell it over the whole dining room.
Yes.
So heads turn and.
Yes. And it happens tableside at Alfred's. They push out this special little cart full of all of these accompaniments that you saw, the ingredients to make the dessert. And the waiters make it for you tableside. You order it and you get your very own sheet of flame happening, you know, a foot away from you. Actually, a little further away. They're very kind about that. They don't really want to scare you.
Not too much.
Not too much, but it needs to be a little bit thrilling.
Exactly.
So,
and then just a little bit lime zest on top.
Yeah. There was a little bit, we had put a little bit on the vanilla ice cream just to start, and this is just a little extra to give it that final boost.
Yeah, and you can really smell the.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. This is such a treat to have you here. That is really good. You took it further with the browning than we had done in the test kitchen, and it makes a big difference. It's the touch of the chef.
And you know what I didn't do because it was covered up? I didn't put the salt in.
A little salt.
So you know what I'm going to do? Just a few grains on top.
Okay.
Because you can taste the difference, and then what the salt does is it brings up the acidity.
It really
tones
does.
down the sweetness, and it just makes the whole thing pop. Also, people don't know normally that salt brings out aroma. So, because it seems different, right? What you smell and what you taste. So how can something that you taste affect what you smell? But it does.
Yeah, it really does. Suddenly the dish got more fragrant and had more pop just with those tiny few grains of salt. So good.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you so much. It is just a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.